Hi guys, it's Stu here from Samsung Now. Samsung Now is where we look at all things Samsung, all things tech and all things gaming and everything in between. Today we're revisiting my settings from last week where I did the update of 1201.6 and I did some initial settings, but having used them for a couple of weeks now, I've actually made a revision to those settings. So first off, we have to make sure we're in movie mode, and then we go down to expert settings. One of the things that may surprise you, I've turned the backlight down to 18 and the contrast down to 87. This has more to do with how the panel is behaving with backlighting and how it's managing the LEDs. For whatever reason, it seems to be a lot brighter than, or quite significantly brighter to me anyway. So I've turned those down just a little bit. Sharpness is 0 as always. Color just down a little bit to 46. Digital clean view off. I've basically turned off all processing simply because it is managing the issues that were had before with judder, and some people had tearing, and color banding seems to have improved. The Automotion Plus, I did add a little previously, just a tiny dab in my prior settings, but from reading about it and from what you guys have told me, there is kind of this aberration that appears every now and then, which is what I've been getting, and that has more to do with Motion Plus. So I've turned that off. And it really, in terms of the judder, it's certainly much better than it was in the prior update. So really with the Automotion on just a tiny bit, what it was doing in terms of sort of just pushing that sort of judder to make it a tiny bit better, but what it was causing in terms of this aberration in certain areas wasn't really worth that trade-off, so I've turned it off. Smart LED off. UHD color to all channels, of course. Dynamic contrast, previously we used to have that on, we turned that off now. And all this, a lot of this is to do with how better the panel is dealing with the backlighting and managing the backlight. Make sure your color tone is set to warm too. White balance. This is the 2-point offset. And then the 10-point, we'll quickly go through these. But basically, if you had these before, you won't need these again because they're the settings we've always had. Some of you have asked how I've got these settings because they're not something you can actually set manually. I borrowed a calibrator, which is a difficult thing to get hold of because they're hugely expensive. But I just wanted to set the white balance using a calibration thing. So that's how I got those. But everything else that I've used has been using RGB cards and as you can see in the how-to section on my channel. So yeah, so you know we've got the gamma down to 0. We initially had that at -1, but we've got that down to 0. So and color space, this is magenta, cyan, yellow, blue, green, and again these sorts of things you need calibration for, so it is, again I used it when I had the calibration system. But if you, for the sake of not everyone having that, the white balance and the color space you can just leave So, you know, for instance, you could put the color space to auto, and it would be fine. It would select the right color space for the content that it's showing. And the white balance, you won't really need to touch those, but it's only because I had it calibrated. So the basics of it are, just very quickly once again, backlight at 18, white brightness at 47, contrast at 80:7, sharpness at 0, color at 46, all sources, digital clean view off. Basically only use that if you're watching DVD or some standard def. So if you're watching some standard def content and a DVD, just basically turn that on and it'll tidy it up a bit. But anything else, any other time, turn that off. Auto motion plus, we've now turned that off due to the aberration. Smart LED, again, we've turned that off because the panel is dealing with backlighting an awful lot better. The HDMI black levels are set to auto, we can't turn that off. Dynamic contrast, again, because the panel is dealing with the backlighting a lot better and we're not having to sort of compensate, we're turning this off, because it does tend to crush shadows a little bit, crush the blacks. And color tone set to warm 2, white balance 2 point, and 10%. Just quickly go through these again, just in case. It saves you rewinding, so we've already gone through these once already. And again, these were calibrated using some very fancy hardware and software. Okay. And finally, color space. You can set that to native if you like. That's sorry, to auto. That's usually the best setting, but if you can get hold of a calibrator, these are the settings that it calibrated for this TV. It's red, green, blue, yellow, cyan, magenta. So there we have it. Those are sort of my revised settings for the KS series of TVs using 1201.6 after having viewed it for a couple of weeks now. I'm now going to show you my settings for gaming and also for sport, because we've had the London Athletics Championships and I made some settings, some changes to that as well. Okay guys, hope that's helpful. Any questions, just shout and I'll let to respond. Okay, thanks again. Bye bye.